Welcome to the Tried It podcast, your proven path towards a better copywriting business. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Nicole.
And we are here today on our special implementation episode. We're going to be talking about the book Everybody Writes by Anne Handley, second edition, and what we found from reading it and how we have implemented the techniques of the book in our own copywriting work.
Should I kick things off?
Yes. So today we're going to discuss the 3 implementation points that we talked about on the previous episode, what our experience was like implementing them in our own business, what results we've got, if any, what we're going to carry on doing, what our advice is to you, and how those exercises are going to show up in the Tried It podcast newsletter. So just as a reminder, the podcast is in no way a substitute for buying the book. We highly recommend that anybody who does any kind of writing for a living buys the Everybody Writes book, first or second edition, although we really like the second edition, because it's an excellent companion to your writing. What we're doing here is talking about how we found the book and how it's changed our work as copywriters. So perhaps, Nicole, you'd like to go first and remind everybody what your 3 implementation goals were after having read the book, and tell us about your journey since then.
I also wanted to add that it's really important that you read the book, because you might get something else out of it. And I think that's the thing. I think these books are gems.
That's true. That's a great point.
And I think everybody's going to might get something different from the book. And you know what? When you do read these books, we would love to hear from you. Like, what was your takeaway? What did you get from this book? We're all ears. We would love to hear.
That's true. Yes, everybody, it might resonate with you in a different way, or remind you of a different part of your business and your writing skills that you need to focus on, which isn't what we're focusing on right now. But what we're talking about is our takeaways and how this book has inspired us to become better copywriters.
Great. Should I kick off with my implementation goals?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. So my 3 implementation goals were free writing. So I wanted to commit to every day to do, in the book, Anne Handley talks about it's like a quad free writing exercise. I also wanted to commit to honing and refining my editing process, which I admitted on our last podcast episode to being sorely lacking. And the last thing I mentioned was about playing around with the formatting of my work, which is something she also explores, how you can play around with copy and content in different ways. I'll be honest, I wasn't so consistent with the free writing, but I did do it. And I will say that even though I can't give you a tangible metric, something has switched with my writing. I don't know if it's permission. So I didn't do the graph. What I ended up doing was I used a site called 750 Words. It's a really good site and it's free. And what I would do is every day I would sit down, I would set a timer for about 20 minutes, and I would write. And usually I would be actually in a coffee shop, and so in a way I was implementing Anne's idea, because the idea is to look for something that you see, hear, learn, or things around you. So I kind of took that, and I was in a coffee shop. Most days I work from coffee shops. And I'd look around me and I'd sort of see what was happening, and I would turn it into a story. So that's what I started working on. And it doesn't seem to be related to my work. But it really was like an invitation to play and to write. And I found like it loosened something. Like it was kind of like oil in a something rusty. Like it just kind of like loosened my process. So I highly recommend that. The other thing about my editing process,
I think that goes back to what we were talking about in the previous episode of warming up your brain on your own dime, not on your client's dime. Did you notice any of that playfulness creep into any of your client work that you did, or any of that kind of creativity?
It's a great question. I think some of the stuff, like I write often for very serious B2B companies that are dealing with very serious things. So there isn't always room to be creative, but I did sometimes find myself using like more playful language, but more relaxed language. There was that. And I saw it in things like funny places where you wouldn't think, like in emails to my clients. I allowed myself to be obviously not rude, but more playful. I sent a proposal. I found myself being more playful. Like, yeah, it did creep up. And recently I wrote this post, and like the words, I was telling Sarah Sarah was telling you just before we started recording, like the word just kind of popped into my head. And I really attribute that to the fact that like I've been playing more with language and with writing. Like it was a whole fully formed sentence that just kind of washed into my brain. So I
love that. I think I've noticed in your LinkedIn posts as well that your language has been a bit more playful, and your ideas have to how you express your thoughts about clean tech copywriting has been just a bit more kind of light and dynamic. And obviously, if that's something our listeners want to see for themselves, they can follow you on LinkedIn and see if they pick up on that too.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I think I have been trying. Like, I think, like, listen, I think this book is magical. Like, I really think it's a magical book. And in Sarah and I's, our newsletter, when you subscribe, you'll see in our newsletter, we're going to be giving you writing prompts based on these books and exercises and all sorts of things. And it's really an opportunity to turn this book into a very practical, actionable newsletter. And so every week you're going to get this almost like workbook on ideas and inspiration, and also from the books that we're reading. Because even though those are my 3 implementation goals, I really got a lot more out of it. But I'll talk about that in a second. So just before I move on to you, Sarah, sorry. The other 2 things, my editing process. My editing process, I haven't formalized it. I will say I'm definitely being more thoughtful when I edit. I'm less precious about my writing, and I am not afraid to chuck. And also, Anne talks a lot about how the first paragraph is often redundant. I'm learning to just kind of chop it out and like restart and play with things. So it's definitely given me that. I will say I need to go back to the drawing board and actually write down an official and proper writing process, which is something I need to do. And once I've done that, I'm happy to share it. If anybody who listens would like to see that or to collaborate on that, let me know. And the last thing,
yes, I think that would be really interesting to see. Perhaps you could share some of your work before you're writing, before editing and after editing, and kind of walk through how and why you made those particular changes.
It's a scary thought. I feel like
that's true. Not everyone likes to show they're working out, but maybe if you're feeling brave enough.
I feel like Anne is such a pro that, like, I imagine we're cooking in a kitchen, and it's like everything is neat and organized, and I'm like messy. Like, it's like there's everything all over, and there's a tomato paste on the counter, and like there's some pasta that's fallen on the floor, and like I'm like messy. So and I don't feel like
the end result is delicious.
This is true. My last bit of my implementation goal was about playing around with different formats of my writing. I think I'm still in the idea phase with this. Like, I have an idea for like a separate newsletter that I want to play around with, and I started like I allowed myself to open myself up to other ideas, like a kind of a longer piece not related to things that I want to write. I really feel, and I say to all copywriters, this is your invitation to write. Like, this book is your invitation to write if you're feeling stuck. That's really what it did for me. And the other thing I will share before I pass things on to you, Sarah, I was recently on a call with a prospective client, and I used something from this book, and it wasn't related to these goals, and it just showed me how much this book actually impacted me. So it was about a clean tech company. They're looking for help with emails. When it comes to emails, obviously they're very concerned about very specific metrics, measuring opens, things like that. And he said to me, how would you measure the success of this campaign? So I listened and I spoke, and I said, but in this book, Everybody Writes by Anne Hindley, she talks about other metrics. She talks about things like replies, and we had a discussion about that. And I saw that he was quite impressed. It was quite taken aback. And it really inspired me. Anyway, but on tech, what were your implementation goals, and what did you find?
So, my 3 implementation goals, the first one was similar to yours, to have a daily writing habit. And I think I made a commitment of writing 700 words per day. I wasn't using the method that Anne Handley talks about in the book. I instead, I've subscribed to a newsletter from Claire L. Fishback, who I mentioned in the last podcast episode. And she is a writing coach, and she has what she calls the 2CAN20 method for writing, which is that she sends out a selection of prompts. No, I bought a selection of writing prompts from her, a huge selection. And the 2CAN20 method is turning your phone off, turning all distractions off, and just writing for 20 minutes per day. And she actually recommends several sets of 20 minutes per day. But I thought, we'll start with one. We'll see how it goes. And I collected data on how many words I wrote. So all in all, I did this for 2 weeks. I didn't write on weekends, but I did manage more than 700 words a day. I actually averaged 785 words. And there were 1 or 2 days that the output was pretty low, but there was one day where I wrote nearly 1,000 words in 20 minutes. So I was quite impressed with that. Yeah, my typing also isn't very quick either. So there are a lot of typos, but still nearly 1,000 words. I would say that a couple of things, I took a couple of things from this writing practice. One is that if I stop doing it, I have a mental block around picking it up. So it's much easier to continue the momentum when you have it rather than stop it and start again, which I found about a couple of different things about owning my own business. It's much easier to maintain momentum than to start it from nothing. It reminded me that creativity is actually a muscle. It's not a resource that'll dry up at some point, like I don't know, you buy something from a shop and you eat it all and it's gone, the bag of crisps or something. Actually, the more you practice creativity, the more it renews itself. And I think I had been going through a phase of feeling a little bit creatively burnt out and like I didn't have many ideas. So the idea of writing gave me a little bit of anxiety, because I was like, oh, what if I waste all of my creativity and energy on a 20-minute writing exercise that ultimately doesn't mean anything, because the purpose isn't for it to go anywhere. It doesn't serve anything. I'm not sending it to a client. Should I spend creative effort on that? And actually the answer definitively is yes, because you rewire your brain a little bit. You get into the habit of writing quickly, efficiently. And I found that with these writing exercises, with the prompts are, I quite like the dialogue prompts. So things like a short line of dialogue. Do you notice anything different about me? He makes films. I didn't ask what kind. Let go. You can trust me. So I would use that as a starting point and just write for 20 minutes. And I would aim for a different kind of style of writing, a different emotion, or a different period in history, just to kind of challenge myself. And I'm not necessarily going to take them a lot further, but I felt quite proud of what I was able to produce in the output. So I would recommend this 2CAN20 method for somebody who needs like a little bit of a kick to get started, and somebody who wants to kind of reconnect with their own creativity and build up that trust that when you start something creative, it snowballs and you can keep it going. You're not going to just get to the end and think, I'm dead now. So I will carry on with the 2CAN20 method, and I'm going to try and do it as much as possible, because as I said, when you stop it's really hard to start again. But keeping it going, I think, is a really good habit for my brain, for my motivation, for my creativity. And I personally find a lot of satisfaction from counting how many words I've done, and also ticking it off on a box, like on a checklist. Have I done my toucan 20 today? Big fat tick. Great. Well done, Sarah. Carry on. So that was a long, rambly answer for my first implementation goal, the daily writing habit. My second,
Can I just ask something? Can I
sorry,
just ask?
Yeah.
I just want to ask you something. So sorry. So first of all, I want to applaud you. First of all, like, you had some impressive results. Very impressive. I loved so much of what you said. I loved it. I just want to ask you quickly, did you find this impacted your client work in any way?
I don't think that it had a direct impact on my client work, but I think that the confidence that it gave me has helped me with my client work, that I can play around a little bit more, and that I can that the ideas won't just dry up. And actually, sometimes you just have to force a couple of ideas out for the next ones to come, rather than try and think, okay, well, I best not expend all my energy on this, because what if there's no more ideas after that?
Fascinating.
Yeah. So all in all, I'm pretty pleased with that. And I think, yeah, just to keep it going, I just need to keep making a checklist so that I have something to tick off, so that I have my little dopamine hit of yes, I have done that today. I was thinking about it last night, actually. I have almost 100-day streak on Wordle, and I don't even like Wordle that much, but I don't want to break my streak. So if I can do the same thing with the Toucan 20 of starting a streak and maintaining it, who knows where I'll be this time next year.
We got to check in with you this time next year.
Yeah, the things we do to trick our stupid brains. My second implementation commitment was, like you, it was editing my work using the Anne Shimley's Go Push Shine process, her GPS process, which she talks about much more thoroughly in the book. And using a mental reframe of editing is the fun part of writing. I have realized I've been able to get better at editing work that I do for clients, actually, particularly my translation work, weirdly, because translation can require quite a lot of editing. However, for editing my own work, I've still found it to be a bit tricky, primarily because she talks about different sweeps of editing in the book, that you have like a one sweep for overall flow where you're looking big picture, and one sweep where it's like minutiae, tiny details. And I struggle so much to pull those apart because I want to do everything all at once. So I have spent more time on my editing, but I haven't been able to get it as systematic as I'd liked. However, I've noticed that I absorb some of the rules that she talks about in the book, and they're becoming part of my editing process and also part of my writing process. Like, one example is how she talks about you should use the most simple form of the verb possible. And for some reason, this rule has become lodged right in the center of my brain. And I've started doing that more naturally, which I definitely didn't do before. So I think for my editing, I find it too stressful to try and do multiple sweeps of a work for different purpose. You know, maybe a future version of me will do that, and that future version will also have great hair and loads of money and a pet, and, you know, she'll have everything. But this version of me, I think that I'm going to make an editing checklist that I will follow for my own writing, for my clients' writing. And at least that way it'll be a sort of crutch or reassurance thing for me that I have checked the writing for these things, like, is every verb in the most simple form that it could be? Do my ideas flow logically from one sentence to another? Is each sentence carrying its weight, or are there redundancies in there? And that checklist will form part of one of the Tried It newsletters. So keep your eyes open for that, because it might be useful in your work too. And my last implementation goal was your idea, Nicole, because I was talking about how I wanted to aim for more clarity in my work. And you suggested me going through some of my old LinkedIn posts, rewriting them with clarity and conciseness in mind. Is conciseness a word? Concision?
Wow, I don't know.
I don't know. This is really embarrassing. Conciseness. I'm just going to say, I'm going to say it with confidence, and then it'll sound like a word. I just feel like, when Donald Trump forgot the word certainty and he said surety. That's me, right? Right. So I wanted to write with more clarity and conciseness. So I picked some of my old LinkedIn posts and rewrote them with that in mind. And I took screenshots to compare number of interactions, number of impressions. So for each post, I only rewrote two. So for both posts, I took a screenshot of the post with the number of impressions that it had, and I wrote down what was my goal with this post. What was I trying to get the reader to do? Who is the reader that I have in mind? And then I rewrote it using this goal for this audience. And I definitely cut them down on words. They were a lot shorter. So I had one quite long post, which was, the goal was about getting people to subscribe to my own newsletter, where I talk about repurposing podcast content. And I made them shorter. And actually, with one of these posts, as I was posting it, I hit post, and then I realized that I could cut out the entire first paragraph, a la Anne Handley, and start, because I had a much better hook in the second paragraph. So that was a real live editing moment for me. So I'm terrible at math, so I can't do percentage increase in impressions. We're just going to talk numbers without percentages.
Okay.
The first one, I had 394 impressions. So sorry, this was for a post that I did a year ago, encouraging people to sign up to my newsletter. That was pretty long. It's 4 paragraphs, 4 bullet points, and then another paragraph. And I cut that down to 3 much shorter paragraphs, and also the 4 bullet points. So I went from first version had 8 reactions, 2 comments, 394 impressions, and the more concise version had 394 impressions, not so many more, but I had more interactions and 5 comments. Part of this makes me think that LinkedIn is just killing organic reach right now, which is a topic for another day. Yeah. But I did have some results from it. And then the second one was a post about talking to my ideal client and asking them to get in touch with me if this post sounded like them. And this one I did get, so on the first version of that a year ago, I just had 5 reactions, 276 impressions, no comments. And on the second version, I had 9 interactions, 4 comments, 378 impressions. Still nobody reached out to me, but I did have more reactions to it. And rereading it now, even the new edited version of it, I can see things that I would cut out with this slightly different editing mindset, because I had a really nice analogy in there of ignoring your old podcast episodes is like leaving your Ferrari in the garage. It's nice and safe, but you're not even close to making the most of it. And I think that now I would start with that hook rather than have it
Yeah.
2 paragraphs in, or sorry, 2 sentences in. So work in progress. I think that this will be something that I carry on with, partly because it's a good idea to review your old content in any world. That's a good idea to do, and to reuse old messaging to make sure that you're kind of staying consistent on your messaging rather than having to kind of create things from scratch each time. So yes, it's a habit that I will carry on with. Maybe I'll aim to do 1 post a month that's essentially a rewrite of a post of mine from a year or so ago. And we will see where we go from there. If anybody else wanted to adopt this method of rewriting their old LinkedIn posts, screenshot the post and copy and paste the text from it. And when you're rewriting it, it is good to have this idea in mind of what was the goal here, what was I trying to achieve, and use that as the tool for your editing, because essentially this is 100% editing. It's not rewrite. It's not writing from scratch. So having a goal in mind will help you to edit with more precision.
I love that. And I think that one of the things that came to my mind whilst you were speaking is that I think this is a very good strategy for actually building a social media calendar, which I know sounds bizarre. But like, let's say, I don't know, whatever your cadence is, whatever you agree to doing per week, like you could, let's say, agree to do let's say 8 posts a month, right? And you could agree on say 4 main topics, and then the other 4 could be recycled from that. And when I say recycled, I mean what you've just described, this amazing editing process. And then you could test. Because my thinking is not only do I think it makes it more concise and clearer or whatever, but I think that it actually might also appeal to different audiences, if that makes sense.
Yes, I think so. You can, as you say, you can retool old posts to appeal to different audiences, and also hopefully if you're rewriting a post that's a year old or more than that, hopefully your audience will have grown in that time, so it's going to be a new message for somebody. And even if it's your audience is basically the same people, I can guarantee that nobody will notice that you're rewriting old posts. People just don't pay that much attention to you. You could copy and paste the same post from a year ago and nobody would notice. That's not the point of the exercise that we're trying to achieve here, but you don't need to have anxiety around, will people get bored of hearing this from me? They won't. I think it's a nice exercise that you could, rinse and repeat for many years, because actually you're going to get to the real kernel of your message of, this is what I want somebody to retain from reading this post, and just kind of dress it up in different ways, just to kind of keep that keep the interest there. And you can try out different hooks to get people into reading the same message.
If I'm not mistaken, I think that that's something Anne mentions in the book about when you start a piece, whatever it is, a piece of writing, at the top you put what is this about? If I'm not mistaken, I think that's something she talks about, and I actually find that sometimes I lack a process a lot of the time when it comes to writing. I just kind of write, and then often I end up in funny places. And I think what you're talking about getting to the kernel and getting to the heart of the message is exactly that. If you have at the top of the page, this is the message, this is where I want people to get to, it's so strategic, and it's such a nice path for the reader. And I think my fear around it has always been that I'm going to dilute it of all the creativity. And I think it's not that. I think it makes it a smoother experience for the reader. I think that's all it does. And Anne is big on that. I think all this editing, all this being focused on the message, that's what it does. It's being empathetic towards the reader.
Yes, that relentless empathy that she talks about. I also think having your goal for the post at the top of your page helps you to not chicken out from it. Because if you're asking for something, essentially, if you're asking for more clients or if you're asking for more followers, it's sometimes I personally feel intimidated about doing that, but it's harder to weasel your way out of if you're writing a post saying, this is essentially me looking for new clients. If you don't achieve that by the end of writing the post, you haven't
Right.
met your objective.
And also the other thing is that, which comes back to what you said earlier about how, LinkedIn is killing organic reach. If you are very clear on what you want to achieve with every post, if that post answers that specific goal, regardless of how it performed, it's a success. Like if I write at the top of my post, I want this post to drive home this message, or I want to do this, and it does that, even if one person read it and one person liked it and it achieved my specific goal, it's a success as far as I'm concerned.
I really like that reframe because I think part of managing your own expectations as a business owner is focusing on the process first. Outcomes, it would be great if you had amazing outcomes. We'd all love it if we had outcomes. We'd all love to win Oscars for our copywriting, even though there aren't Oscars for copywriting. But
There should be.
It's much more realistic. There should be, yeah. It's much more realistic to focus on processes first.
Yeah, as somebody, I'm somebody who I'm realizing is probably a closeted ADHD person. More and more, I really think I am. I'm just in denial about it, but really I am. I have so many stories to tell you, but I won't bore you today with this stuff. But processes are gold, and like honestly, they're a lifesaver. I think I've avoided them my whole life because I was afraid of being boring. And I had this idea that like writing was craft and all this other stuff, which Anne also addresses beautifully in this book. Highly recommend book. But again, I think like once you have solid processes, as you say, it's less about outcomes. The processes are calming, and like if can I swear? No, probably not. If the pork always hit the fan,
probably have
as my brother ready. Fine. If the shit hits the fan, and you have a solid process, you have something to lean on. Like the other day, I was listening to a training just quickly about finding leads. I forgot who it was, but I can look them up later and we can add it to the show notes. And he said that if you're in this point where you have a dry pipeline and you're looking for leads, first of all, hit yourself on the wrist. You failed yourself. But second of all, pick yourself up and understand that you need to put in place a solid process so that never happens again. And often I think we cling to processes when it's too late. And if we had the boring process in place day in, day out, we'd never get to that point. Not that we wouldn't have dry spells, but I think, I don't know, I sometimes lately have like these waves of insane anxiety because I don't have the processes. But I am rambling. So that is that. But I highly recommend this book. I really it really inspired me. It really inspired me. As somebody who's been writing for over a decade, it really inspired me. I got so much out of this book. Highly recommend you buy it. And if I may,
yes,
I'm going to do like a little polite plug for our labor of love, our newsletter, the Tried It podcast newsletter. But I'm going to pass it over to Sarah to tell you more about that.
Yeah, there's always room for a plug for the newsletter. So in the newsletter, when you sign up to it, you will get an email from one of us every single week on a Tuesday, which will include reflections on the books that we're reading, on things that we have learned from our own copywriting business. But more importantly, there are exercises in there that will help you become a better copywriter in what we're aiming for, 13 minutes or less. So when that exercise comes in, it's something that you can do that's focusing on a technique or a point raised in one of the books that we're reading. And the exercise is something that we've designed, inspired by the book, that's going to help you to develop that technique or give you something new to think about, which will help you as you work on your own copywriting and your copywriting business. So it's like a little shot of vitamin C that's going straight into you that will help you over time to develop your copywriting skills. So sign up to the newsletter. get ready for it to arrive in your inbox every Tuesday, and remember to bookmark it so that you can do the exercise when you have time. And if you're signed up to the newsletter and you're stuck with an exercise or you're stuck on something with your copywriting for your clients, please also reach out to us. Send us an email and Nicole or I will look at your question. We'll give you our best thoughts based on our own experience as copywriters, and we'll let you know what you think. We're hoping that it'll be, as well as a kind of exercise and inspiration for you, that it'll be a resource for sort of support and comfort, because copywriting can be kind of a long and lonely road sometimes. But we want you to know that in the Tried It podcast, we really care about your copywriting business and your copywriting skills. So sign up for the newsletter, $5 a month. It's super worth it. People really like it. And we will see you over there.
I just want to say one more thing. Just, I know we're overselling, but about the newsletter, there are so many very, very good.
Oversell the newsletter.
Yeah. But I just, because I feel very strongly about this. There are so many good copywriting courses, and we've all done them or we aspire to do them, and they're amazing. And they have a place, and we are in no way trying to replace them. But what we feel is missing is exactly what Sarah said, this shot of vitamin C, this like actionable, I'm in the trenches, I'm working on it, now I'm in 13 minutes, I'm improving my copy skills and I can see a slight difference. And as Sarah said, you get stuck and we want to help you, we want to collaborate. And that's that. So yeah, sign up. We would love to have you. We'd love to help you on this journey.
Yes. I also think it's a realistic model for progress, because sometimes we think about progress being a straight line up over time. And actually, no, progress is, it can be a couple of steps forward, a couple of steps back. It could be one big leap and then a plateau. But it's also about having these habits, because these habits and implementing habits in your copywriting will help to sustain you over time, wherever you are at in your journey, because you'll be learning a little bit more each time. Like I was saying before in the episode, with this idea now of making each verb be in the most simple form possible, that's stuck in my brain now. That's a habit. And that for me is progress. So with the newsletter, you're going to learn amazing, small, simple, easy techniques like that, that'll just kind of help you to keep your foot on the gas.
Amazing. I want to sign up.
Right. So I think that we've talked about the newsletter enough for this episode, but not enough overall. So Nicole, maybe you want to announce the book that we're going to analyze next, and then we'll wrap things up.
It's our next book, which we're very excited about, is Brand Story by Donald Miller. It's very interesting. We're very excited. It's going to change the way you see. I think it's going to change the way you see writing, and it brings in narrative theory. Very exciting. Can't wait for that.
Yeah. So on the next episode, we're going to talk about our experience of reading StoryBrand, and decide on our implementation goals that we're going to set and analyze together. So this book is much more focused on brand messaging, and how you can create a kind of messaging roadmap for any kind of brand. It was Nicole's choice. I was super happy that she chose it, because again, it was one of those books that I heard referenced everywhere, and I was one of those people who nodded along, being like, aha, StoryBrand, brand story, yeah, that's me. And now I can say, we're going to read it, we're going to see what we've learned from it, and most importantly, we're going to see how we can apply the things we've learned from it to become better copywriters. So that's all in the next episode.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to hearing from you, looking forward to sharing that episode. And I think that's it from us for today. Right, Sarah?
I think that's it. Yep. Right. Thank you so much for joining us, guys, and catch you on the next episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and sign up for the newsletter.
And just to make it fun, every time we say sign up for the newsletter, feel free to take a sip of whatever tea or beverage you're drinking, just to mix it up a little bit. Bye, guys.
Yeah, wine, gin, water. It's all good. See you there. Bye.
Bye. Bye.